Good evening, it's Sylvia here.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
How is everybody keeping?
Baruch Hashem, fine. Thank you.
Got the hair.
Yeah. And you?
Baruch Hashem, had an interesting conversation with a fellow called Eitan this week. Oh boy, was I in trouble.
Hello.
Oh my gosh. I hope not.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Hi, you all right?
Hi, Haley.
Hiya, how are you doing, both of you? How are you doing, Levi?
Fine.
Everybody right?
Baruch Hashem, the sun's shining. Good things are happening. What'd you say?
I've not had a brilliant day.
Yes.
Oh.
Bad news today.
Oi.
A colleague's brother's died of it. So I've not had the best day, sorry.
No, we need to have good news. We need to have good news. Please God, Best Hashem.
You got any? You got any? Idiots going down to the beach in Southend. Is that good news? Packing onto the beaches. Because it's been so hot, and that's what they do now. They queue up for ice cream. Don't even get me started.
It's all in the ice cream. It's all in.
It is all in the ice cream. You're right. It's all in the ice cream.
So you're telling us positive things. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Mm.
What else is going on? I was talking to my daughter. She's 4 years old, and I was putting her to bed. I asked her what you're looking forward to. She's excited that end of next week is Shavuos and you have cheesecake on Shavuos, and she loves cheesecake. Okay, so good things are happening. Works for some. How do you like cheesecake? Anyone?
I love cheesecake, but I'm not gonna make it. I'm sure everybody loves cheesecake.
No, we don't have it.
Oh, why
We
not?
don't have it. Brian's vegan. He won't have cheesecake. And I'm not making vegan cheesecake. So we have other things.
Oh, yeah. Vegan cheesecake. Look. What's the
Not.
world come to?
I know. Well, it's a completely different way of life. A parallel universe.
Wow.
But it works out well. Don't worry.
Baruch Hashem,
Plenty of
I'm sure
things
it
to
does.
have. Yeah.
Yes, so you got to look at the spice side of life. Okay, it's just gone 8 o'clock and we're going to get started because we have some good stuff to get through. I'm going to stop the screen share until we need it, because I'd rather be able to see who's here, and say if anyone wants to speak up, please do so anytime. If you want to unmute yourself, it's *6 on a phone, or just unmute on the screen as you wish. I'm going to start off with, before we do muting, if anyone has had any success in trying to apply the positivity we've been exploring over the past 2-3 weeks. If you've had any success in putting it to practice, just say yes or wave your hand.
Can't wave my hand. I'll say yes.
Oh,
yeah?
Somebody's positive here. You're making as if you're. No, it is. I truly believe that even if it's not easy, when we discuss and make ourselves aware of the difference, we're already a step ahead. Because we know that positivity is a thing, because we know that being positive is a choice that we should be trying to make, then we already have a step ahead. Number one. Number two, even if we don't get there, we haven't reached the stage of positivity, but the very fact that we want to be positive is already a win. Not only because we're getting better and better at it, but just trying to do the right thing is already a good thing. Trying to do the right thing is really what we're about. This is what we live for, and this is what we do, and that's why even if we don't get there, but the fact that we're trying to be there is already a good thing. So we spoke in the first week, positivity is a good thing. Last week we described tools to be able to start becoming more positive. Today we want to talk about practical steps. And the title of tonight's class is The Good Eye. You have to give me a description of what you think a good eye might mean. Anybody?
Is to see the good in everything, even if it's not so good. There's something there that is good.
Okay, so is that a delusional eye?
Potentially, it's delusional. If it's a genuine not good situation and you only see good, potentially, yes, it's delusional, potentially.
So are you advocating to make believe? Can't be.
No, you could turn that around, couldn't you?
Sorry? One more time?
You could turn that around and say, it's not delusional, but you're making the best of something that's not wonderful.
Oh, so we're navigating a fine line here. We're making it a little bit complicated, but yes, it's a little bit naive, one might argue, but we're choosing to be that way rather than be negative. Is that what we're suggesting? Anyone want to add to that?
Sometimes you can make that other person find a way to be positive themselves by initially starting with a bit of delusion.
Wow, that's deep, because it sounds that basically what we're suggesting is that sometimes a white lie is kosher, and that's the halakha. Sometimes, you know who would do that very often? Moshe Rabbeinu's brother. He had a brother. Moshe Rabbeinu had a brother who was the high priest, the Cohen God. His name was Aaron, and the Torah describes that when he passed away, all of the Jewish people, men and women, mourned his passing. And the obvious question is, why is it that we only find the mourning of his passing, men and women mentioned clearly specifically by by Aaron, not by no one else? And the answer is because Aaron made it his business to bring people together, whether it was couples in a relationship, whether it was friends or colleagues. And how would he do so? He would go and whisper to so-and-so, you know that person you're having a row with, they wish they could be your friend. They just don't know how to approach you. White lie. He made it up. But it was an educated lie, because it was an assumption that he made that deep inside, everyone wishes they weren't in a fight. And then before anything could happen, he would quickly run down the block and have the same conversation with the other party. So by the time the two parties actually got to meet, they were both assuming that there's an interest in making things up, and it worked like a charm every time. And that's why he was remembered and mourned so strongly, because he made so many people come together. So again, if anyone wants to unmute themselves anytime, please do so by unmuting on your computer or *6 on your phone. I'm going to talk about today a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. It's actually in the 2nd chapter, which we're not going to learn for another 3 weeks, but it's a great quote anyhow. There was a very great sage. His name was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 tremendous students. And he describes what was the greatness of each of his students, of his top 5. At one point, he sent his 5 students on a mission. And he said to them, all of you, go out, explore the world. I want you to come back and tell me, what is the most important value, character trait one should look for to be productive and have a good life? And what is the worst character trait one should really stay away from in order to remain a positive person, good person? And each one came back with something else. And his best answer, and was voted best by the Rabbi, by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai himself, he says his favorite answer, works for him the most, came from his student, Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus. Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus is one of the students, and he came back and he said he's been exploring, he's been looking, he's been reading, he's been studying, and in his estimation, the most important thing I could acquire in life, ayin tov. We've heard of an ayin hara. Ayin hara is an evil eye. If somebody flaunts and somebody else is jealous or looks badly at somebody else who has good blessings, that's the ayin hara, looking at somebody else with a bad eye. Says Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus, the best thing you can acquire in life, ayin tov. Have a good eye, a good lens, like a set of glasses that are spiked. Every time you put them on, things just look good. Now, what he's suggesting is that having an ayin tov changes everything about life, because he's looking for the most important value. And we're going to learn, at least we're going to argue today. We're up for discussion, but we're going to suggest that the ayin tov, looking at life with a good eye, is so good, is so important. It gives us a starting point, a stronghold. Pink glasses. All right. Okay. So the idea is that everything that we look at is already starting off in a good place. And that is really important. I think there's an English quote that what we see depends on what we're looking for. I'm not sure where this comes from, but it sounds great. What we see depends on what we're looking for. So if I'm looking to see a particular color, chances are I'm going to notice that color. If I'm looking to see a particular side of things, chances are I'll notice that. So we're going to focus on that, and obviously we're looking at this from a Jewish perspective, a Torah perspective, what the Torah has to tell us about it. We start off with a story of the Rebbe, because obviously the whole course is based on the positivity bias that the Rebbe had and encouraged us to acquire. Here's a story of the Rebbe. It's a beautiful story because we know that for many years the Rebbe would stand for hours on end just greeting people. And every time he greeted a person, he wanted that if 2 people, himself and someone else, met, something good should come out for a third party. And that's why he would give out dollar bills. You would come and meet him, he would give you a blessing, but he would ask you to do a mitzvah. Take this dollar and give it to charity. Let somebody else benefit from the fact that us 2 have met. That was the approach. So all sorts of people would come. Oftentimes, there were people who had never been to a shul before, never been into a synagogue, but they came to get a blessing. Something was on their heart, something was bothering them, they came to get an uplift. Sometimes there were great Torah scholars that came. One particular time, there was the devout student of a different Hasidic group. It's not so important what the name of the group was. It's actually quite a famous group. But he was a devout follower of another Hasidic master, teacher, Rebbe. and he came by to ask for a bracha. Now, it happened to be that he'd come straight from his circle and his shul and heard a whole long schmooze and talk from his mentor, his leader, his Rabbi. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe asks him, tell me something that you heard over in the other shul. So he said what he remembered. He quoted a Talmud, in which the Talmud describes different attributes about the Jewish people. And one of the lines of the Talmud, of the Gemara, is that even the sinners amongst them are filled with mitzvahs like a pomegranate is filled with seeds. Quote from the Talmud. And the talk in the other shul that he was coming from was the discussion about how come we can talk about a sinner and yet claim that they're filled with mitzvahs. We see clearly there are many people out there are sinners and they're not filled with mitzvahs. So how do we understand the Talmud that seems to be making an almost blanket claim that everyone's got mitzvahs, and even if they're a sinner, they're filled with mitzvahs? And that was the discussion. The Rebbe was so serious when he heard this, and it bothered him so deeply. He says to the fellow, I had exactly the same question. But my question was, if every individual is filled with good deeds, then why call them a sinner? So you have two scholars, both looking at the same text and reading the same lines. One hears it one way, and one hears the exact same phrase and comes up with the same problem and the same question, but exactly the opposite. Directly opposing perspectives. And that sort of shift is exactly the positivity bias that we're talking about. We read a text, we're not just learning, we're not just finding out the matter of the topic at hand, but we're also discovering the reader's state of mind. Where am I up to when I read anything? Read either in a book or read as in take in what's going on around me. And as we said last week, there is nobody who can claim to be unbiased. Everybody is conditioned by what's going on. The question is only, what is my bias? And if we're honest with ourselves and we discover our biases, then our next question is, how can we make ourselves, put ourselves in a better place? Because we are not in a position to change the world around us. We can affect it, we can help it. A lot of what's going on around us is beyond our control. But what we're choosing is, with which bias are we looking? We're looking around and discovering something. There's an image exercise that I was going to put up on the screen. It's you know what, maybe I'm going to try and do it right now. Let's see if I can put it on. You're supposed to, for those of us who have computers, I'm going to unmute this for a second. Let's unmute and put this up on the screen. Here we go. Go. All right, where's the screen share? We've got it up here. You got to look at this picture and tell me what you see. For those who don't have the picture, don't worry, you're not missing much.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's one of these optical things where it can be a person, can't it?
It could either be a young person or an elderly person.
Is it a picture of a woman?
It's a picture of a woman. It's either elderly or young. Who said elderly?
Young.
Young. But there is an elderly woman in there. It's one of these funny
You've got to
pictures,
shift your gaze slightly.
Yeah, it's two pictures in one.
I can't
Exactly.
see the older one. Yeah.
Apparently, they've done a lot of studying with that exact picture.
Yeah.
And what they found is that some people clearly only see one, some people clearly only see the other, and some people can't even see the other one.
No.
Okay? Well, without getting into what you scored on that picture, it's not so important, but it does drive home the message that we see what we're looking for. And I think the researchers that developed this picture were looking for social standing and expectations. What they were saying is that we see what we see first, certainly, what grabs our attention.
Yeah, are you sure they weren't just looking who needs glasses and who doesn't?
Okay. Maybe that also. It's not what they claim to be looking. But along those lines, what we're saying is that we can choose what we're saying. We're biased. There's another cool one which I didn't bring up on the screen, but there's two doctors, two psychologists sat on a bench, I think in Times Square or something, or some park, and the caption is, "We are eye doctors," because the eye doesn't see; it's the mind that sees. The eye is just a window that feeds information. So what we're actually seeing isn't the eye. The eye doctor is up here, looking out for how we translate things, which is the same sort of message that we look at our eyes and we recognize that what we're actually taking in is being directed by what we're looking for. This happens physically. This happens in the physiological body, but certainly on a mental level and an emotional level, that's what's going on. We are noticing and registering and spending time with what we're looking for. Now, if that's happening by everybody, regardless of where we are on the positivity/negativity spectrum, what we want to do is figure out what could we be looking for that would give us a positive bias. What should we be looking at? Because unfortunately, the reality is there's a lot of things in this universe, a lot of things in our world that are not positive. So what should we be looking for? If you just read the news today, are you going to be positive? Maybe. It depends which sites you choose to look at, let's say. But generally, there will, more times than not, be something negative on the average daily feed. And here what we're suggesting is that what we are really looking for is not just knowledge. Knowledge is great. We can know loads of things. Wikipedia has got so much knowledge. So much, but does that make us wise? Does it make us clever? We can repeat things, we can search for things, but in order to develop, we're looking for something deeper than just knowing information. Our eyes are bringing in information. Our senses are taking in all the time. What we do with it is a little deeper than that. And this is the tool that we do have. And what we do have is a tool to be able to look for goodness. And in the Jewish sense, goodness is the same as godliness. Goodness is godliness. What do we mean? That anything that was created for a purpose, that purpose is the ultimate good for that item. So goodness for me is the purpose for which I live. That's godliness. God created me, and living up to that purpose is my godliness. That's what he created me for, and therefore it's my goodness, the goodness for me. And therefore, is every time we encounter a situation, an environment, news, a person, an interaction, we've got to try and see the goodness in it, i.e. the godliness in it. And that is a quest which is much larger than how it makes me feel. It's about what is it here for. So what we're suggesting here is, whenever we bump into anything, we're looking for the godliness in it. Or in English, without using religion, we're going to use any religious words. We say we're looking for the goodness within it. Why do we think there's goodness inside of it? Why do we believe that there is something
I'm sorry, Levi. I'm getting a lot of interference. Can you hear that?
Mute us.
There's clicks and...
Just mute us all.
Oh. Okay. Is that better? Can't hear you. No? It is better. Someone else is shaking their head yes. Okay, good. So that sort of idea. Whenever we look at anything, we search for the goodness. Alfie's raised his hand. I hope everything's okay. Chat if you can. If there's anything you want to ask, please do. Or unmute yourself for a second. The idea is like this. Why do we believe that there's goodness in everything? And the answer is because we believe in Hashem. If we believe that we were created and we weren't just hatched by a chicken. We weren't just an explosion, but we have a purpose. Then we can believe that that purpose will have goodness in it. So now, if we believe that there's goodness in it, even if we can't find it, and we know that it's there, we will try to find it. We will try to find it. We're going to use the expression dig. We're going to dig to find it. Why do I use this expression dig? Because if you know that there's a treasure in your backyard, then in order to find it, you've got to dig it up. And if you don't dig it up, it will remain there and it won't be found. But if you do dig it up, you will have that treasure. We're going to suggest that every single encounter is a treasure. How so? Because our starting point is that it's all part of the master plan. And if that's what we believe, if that's what we know, then we are certain that there'll be goodness in every encounter. It's true that you have to dig, but there's no such thing as an encounter that doesn't have goodness in it. So we're going to do a story of somebody who tried to be negative, and we're going to learn how the Rebbe dug. And we're going to try and learn tools of how, when somebody's actively trying to bash, actively trying to be negative, we can still respond to that with a positive bias. I think that's a great move. If somebody can react to an intentional negativity with a positive bias, that's exactly what we're looking for. Because there are a lot of negative experiences that we go through, and they are positively negative, actively negative, and we have to try and respond correctly. So this is a story of, his name was Fradkin, Levi Yitzchak Fradkin. He was a photographer, actually a very good photographer, and a follower of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he would come often for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot to spend an entire month, and he would literally the whole month be shooting pictures, photography, real photography of the Rebbe and the different ongoings, the environment, the passion, the excitement, and he would capture some really, really good moments on very, very good pictures. Now, he lived in Israel, and one year, I think in the 70s, maybe 75, 76, he did an exhibition in an art gallery, and he called the exhibition 770. That's the address of the Rebbe's shul. But the exhibition was in Tel Aviv. Now, even today, but certainly in the 70s, Tel Aviv wasn't the most Haredi community. Okay, it still isn't necessarily the most, but he put it on and it was great photography. And one person after next came by and were impressed by the angles, by the shots, by the captures. And he had a guest book and people were writing comments. There was one fellow who walked in and he wrote like this. He wrote, "You have tremendous photography, superb photography, but I must say that the subject you've chosen to take pictures of is very primitive. It reminds of the dark times of the Middle Ages." That was his comment. In other words, he says, very nice, you've got great talent, don't be wasting on something stupid like that. And fair comment, that's where his position was. But there was enough other comments in the book. It was like dwarfed and everything else. But the next year, when Mr. Fradkin was back in New York, he brought with the guest book from the exhibition. And as he came by the Rebbe, he handed the Rebbe the guest book and he said, "Look, this is what people are saying about the pictures they're taking of you." The Rebbe flips by, speed reads through it. He notices this one, and he says to Mr. Fradkin, he says to him, "It's interesting. Here you have an individual who is so passionate about what he does, he's unafraid of stepping out of line, of standing up and being different." In other words, he saw this person as a person with integrity. Instead of seeing as a person who's negative, the automatic reaction was, oh, we have somebody who's not afraid to say and to not toe the line just because he feels differently. And then he said, by the way, when you go back, you maybe can tell him and share with him that the Middle Ages wasn't all darkness. So he talks about the darkness of the Middle Ages, and unfortunately for the Jewish people, the Middle Ages were very difficult, but it wasn't all darkness. And that was the instantaneous response that Rebbe felt when he read a negative comment. First of all, the individual, instead of labeling him as, look at the no-gooder, look at so-and-so, he's trying to bash what I'm doing. No, he sees in that same person the very opposite, a positive trait, a positive strand. Here you have somebody who's willing to do what he believes is right, regardless. And that's number one. And then, even on the comment, Middle Ages is a great comment if you're looking to try and knock Yiddishkeit. But the response is you can find positivity in everything, even in the Middle Ages. And that's a story of where we see a bias to try and twist, to dig in every situation to make things look positive rather than negative. We're going to do another story, interesting story. This is a story a little closer to home because you have people do good things and they get hurt for doing good things. I'm not going to ask anyone to say, I know what you're talking about, because probably all of us have been through this. Certainly if you've ever lived with a parent or you've ever lived with a child or with a spouse, you try and do something good for somebody who you care about and then ends up backfiring and the next year. This is the story of a time where it was becoming increasingly problematic. Missionaries who were trying to grab the people who were lower, who were the less fortunate in the Yiddish society. The people were struggling, and they became prime targets for people to try and woo them out of Yiddishkeit. And there was organizations that weren't doing much about it until they came together. The Rebbe actually spearheaded this organization, Yad Lachem, that would be focused specifically on supporting people who needed to deal with this challenge. Yad Lachem. Now, in order to make sure that it had the biggest impact, the Rebbe insisted that the name Chabad, or Lubavitch, which is interchangeable, should not appear on any of the header paper. It shouldn't be anywhere traceable that it came back to Chabad. And this was in order to support, to encourage that more and more people should feel comfortable being part of the organization. And it did have tremendous impact, and it was growing tremendously until one day, it was actually just before Yom Kippur, it was just before Rosh Hashanah time, where they were making an appeal to try and raise funds to help support this organization. And one of the main signers on the whole project, one of the big names, found out from somebody that Chabad was heavily involved, and it wasn't politically correct for that segment to be seen as supporting Chabad for whatever reason. And they backed out at a very crucial time. And to make matters worse, before Yom Kippur, they'd already launched a competition organization, which further hampered the work and basically made them not only less effective, but now having to struggle double as hard and work double as hard. So one of the main organizers was very, very hurt, and he called up the Lubavitch Rebbe and says, Rebbe, what's going on here? How can this be? Such a terrible person. He's bringing us down for no good reason. What's happening? I called him up to ask him why he's doing it, and he denies point blank that he has anything to do with this, and it's nothing to do with him, but clearly he's taking us down. He's really, really worked up. Very upset. Very, very upset an individual. And the Rebbe's response, enormous. Quotes the Talmud. Obviously, he's talking to a scholarly man. He says, read the Talmud. The Talmud, it talks about the Jewish calendar. Now, the Jewish calendar has 12 months, but a leap year doesn't just have an extra day. In the Jewish calendar, a leap year has an extra month. So it's 13 months in a leap year on the Jewish calendar. Who decides if it's 12-year month or 13-month, regular year or leap year? So today we have a fixed calendar. So we know that in every 19-year cycle, there are 7 leap years. But back in the day, it was determined by the Beth Din. The Sanhedrin, the High Court, would determine whether it would be a leap year or not. And it could be determined as late as Purim time, or even a bit later. And therefore you'd be halfway through a year, and all of a sudden you find out, actually, there's an additional month this year. So that decision, whether to make it a 12-month year or a 13-month year, was a big deal. It could have tremendous effect on all sorts of financial aspects. It could have tremendous effect on many other things. But that sort of calculation was reserved for the highest court. And even then, says the Gemara, in the highest court, there are 2 types of people who may not sit on this court for this question. Number one, the Jewish king. Jewish king may not serve on this court to decide whether it's a 12-month or a 13-month year. And the other one is the Cohen God or the high priest. Why these two? Because each one of them could have an interest in extending or shortening the year. How so? The king pays for an army and he pays a wage for each of the soldiers. If there's 12 months in the year, for the pay that he gives to each soldier, he gets 12 months of service. If it's a 13-month year, that for the same amount of money, he will have 13 months of service. So we're worried that the king might be biased to want to make it a 13-month year, even if it's not in the interest of the rest of the country. And therefore we tell the king, the leader of the Jewish people, the king, we tell him, thank you very much. We trust you, we rely on you, we love you, we honor you. But when it comes to deciding the calendar, we have to have a court without you. And the Cohen Gadol, the high priest, the only one who would go into the Holy of Holies on the holiest day of the year, told the same thing. Because you go into the Holy of Holies and you go to the mikveh, and if it's a month later, then it's deeper into the winter. If it's a month earlier, it's still summerish kind of time. And for you walking around barefoot in the Holy Temple, on stone floors and having to go into a mikveh of water, which could be cold, we're worried you might subconsciously have a vested interest and that you'd want to keep it into a 12-month year so that Yom Kippur would come a month earlier. So although we trust you to go into the Holy of Holies, pray on our behalf, you're the most special individual, but at the end of the day, we are human like everyone else. And therefore, we're going to have a court that has no Kohen God on it when it comes to determining the calendar. Says the Rabbi to this individual, here you have it. The greatest of people are still human. And it's just normal. Here you have somebody who perhaps their main supporters or support group have pushed them and pressured him to back down. What can he do? Just like the Kohen Gadol, just like the greatest of our heroes, the same thing. So here you have the step number one, positivity. Look at this individual and recognize the fact that they behave this way doesn't shut them down, doesn't make them bad. It means that they have weakness like anyone else and it's okay. And then the next half of the conversation was even better. When he said, here you have an individual, the reason why he backed down most likely is a survivor from the Holocaust. And everything that he had was lost. And he's desperately trying to rebuild. Just look at him. He's come here to the shores of the United States of America. He's trying to rebuild his community. And here his main supporters are telling him that if he continues on this way, they'll have to withdraw their support. So he's trying to build. And therefore, in his mind, the only way to build is this way. So don't worry. Just recognize that what's driving this is a desire to make good things happen. And we'll have to deal with it. But don't write him off. And that was how the Rebbe understood another individual. First of all, the fact that we're human doesn't make us bad. The fact that we have shortcomings and we've behaved in an inappropriate way doesn't shut us down. And more importantly, look at what's the driving motive. Even in this case, it was the desire to help rebuild. That's bias for positivity. Because you have someone who's trying to shut you down. You have somebody who's trying to take away your money and also trying to create competition in an effort to close you down. And still, what's the bias? The bias is to try and see where is there goodness in it. So that's when somebody's trying to intentionally hurt me, and they still try and find a way to view my worldview, my reality around me with a set of glasses that are biased, spiked, tweaked to always look at the positivity. Having a good eye is not natural. Having a good eye doesn't come on its own. Having a good eye means I've decided that I could just say, I'm going to be honest, or I can say I'm going to be selective. Not naive, but I'll be selective. I'm going to have to deal with the reality either way. But I want to choose to not be brought down. I don't want to allow myself to fall into the trap of being negative, and therefore I'm going to insist on looking for goodness. And it requires digging, but I'm going to dig because I know it's going to be everywhere. There's one more story I wanted to share, but I'm going to try and put it on the video. So even if you can't see it, but you should still be able to hear it, I think. Let's just make sure my share is giving the sound, computer sound. Here we go.
The Rebbe taught me something very important, that the most transformative moments in your life happen when somebody else believes in you more than you believe in yourself.
Der Unterschied in uns, da bei ihnen, was sie gefühlen sich korrekt, zu dem Eberflag, bewählen darf man ein bisschen agrobter. Gefühlen gleich dem Eben Tevo, gefühlen gleich dem Ayim Chaim, zu da sehen, was mit darf groben tiefer und noch tiefer, die Arobzunehmen mit all den Unionen, Hambalim und Mastiri.
I was at Torres Chaim, which was on Belmont Avenue in Brooklyn. Shortly before my 10th birthday, my mother and my baby sister and myself went to see the Rebbe. We went to 770, and my mother started to talk to the Rebbe. My son, Shalom, he's been thrown out of the yeshivas, and the rabbi says this, and he's not listening, and the rabbis are complaining he doesn't like the school, he doesn't like the homework, he doesn't like the program, he likes eating stuff in class, and then my mother's crying and crying because she was searching for answers. The Rebbe turns to me, and he smiles, and he goes, "Come here." So I started the conversation. Because I was ready. I said to the Rebbe, "You're the Rebbe?" So the Rebbe looks at me with a big smile. He says to me 3 questions. The first question was, "Are you a good boy?" I said, "No." The conviction. I was ready. I was used to the same. So then he says, "You like school?" I said, "No." Then he says to me, "Do you listen to your mother?" I said, "No." So with a big smile, he turns to my mother and he goes, Emes, it's good.
Hat aufgegraben, die Mayim Chaim, was sie behalten bei jeder Rieden, a viele bei dem Rieden, was ruft sich an der Weile. Beshem Ache ist a sichere Sache, a sichert von Eretz Chefetz, a sichere Sache, a verbunden mit Mekel Mayim Chaim, a Bayelikim Chaim.
Emes, it's good. And that was, wow. I jumped right back into the whole scene.
Man darf sich mehr nicht haben Geduld und nicht jallen in Kirche wie Gier. Auf der groben Sache und aufgraben dem Bejehr, wie es waren zu tun im Stürmen, dem Mayim Chaim Shebetech, aber das gewähnt da wieder von den Baal HaYilul.
Okay, so that is the story that I was going to share. For those of us, hold on 1 second, if anyone wants to say any comments, I'm happy to hear.
No, there was loads of noise, so we just had to read what he was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I could hardly hear it.
So that's why you were able to read it, because it's very old, probably from the 70s.
It's very crackly. Very crackly.
I apologize. I'm gonna give you a summary of what we just saw. I should have tried this earlier. Here's what the story was. The story was of a man who's now a Zaidi, but at the time he was a young boy, an orphan, and his mother had brought him to the Rebbe in desperation. Why was she desperate? Because he'd been thrown out of every yeshiva he was put into. Every school that took him in, had thrown him out. And here he was finally in one school, and now they're threatening to throw him out again. And she comes to the Rebbe and she's crying her eyes out. She's got to help me out. And the Rebbe calls him over. Now he's seen this all before. Goes to the guy and then they try to convince him and sweet talk. And basically, the Rebbe's Yiddish is proper. You like it, okay? So the guy comes to the Rebbe, calls him over, and he says he was ready for the questions. He wasn't going to toe the line in the slightest. When the Rebbe asks him 3 things, "Are you a good boy?" He wasn't nervous. He said, "No, I'm not a good boy." He says, "Do you like school? Do you like yeshiva?" "No." Clear, straight up. Then he says to him, okay, do you listen to your mother? No. And there he had it. He'd taken the big rabbi, he told him the way it is. And the Rebbe smiles at him, a beautiful smile, turns to his mother. He says, oh, he's a kid that only says the truth. Whoa, how good is that? Here you have a kid, I've asked him 3 questions. He was straight up and truthful. I love it. The kid is listening. And he says, you just said it, at that point, something shifted in his mind. What shifted in his mind, and then this is a little bit about the beginning of that same film, maybe we'll share it later, was what the previous chief rabbi, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, says, what made him go into communal work, his interaction with the Rebbe. When someone believes in you more than you believe in yourself. I don't believe I can do this, that, and the other. I don't believe I'm this type of person. And then I hear someone who honestly believes that I'm greater than I thought I was. The very faith in me that somebody else is demonstrating switches me on, helps me recognize more than I could ever have about my own very own self. That's what the Rebbe did with his positivity and encourages us to use the same tool because it's the same thing. We said we're going to dig to try and find the positivity in every situation. First of all, because there has to be positivity. Goodness is godliness. Secondly, not only should we, but we know that if we dig, we will see our reality will be what we're looking for. We will be noticing more and more good things. Because if we're involved and we're looking for good things, then our eyes will notice more good things. And we'll notice less of the non-good things. It's not naivety. It's selective choice. And it's a very worthwhile selective choice, as we spoke for the last 2 weeks. But it's something that we can choose to do, have a good eye. Now we're learning a third point. So not only are we going to choose what to see, and also we're going to dig because we know it's there, but we also have the ability to empower the person we're looking at. The power to empower, the ability to empower somebody else is by looking at them positively. Let's just say, for argument's sake, I don't get along with my sister. Every time we're on the phone, it's a balagan, and she's bullying me, and she's shouting at me, and it's a screaming match. I can't wait for the conversation then. I want to be nice. I wish to be positive. It just doesn't work. And in my mind, she's just such a negative person. What are my chances? What are my chances? How can all this help me? No, somebody help me out. How can what we've learned today help me if I have a faribble with my sister? No, somebody say.
You keep digging until the water springs forth.
Yeah.
Give me some English words. How do you keep digging?
You don't give up. You don't give up on her. You persevere with her.
Yeah, I think in English is a saying: if you're having a dig at someone, it's not a good thing, right?
Right.
I think you have to make that phone call with a slightly less, with an attitude of not anticipating that the conversation's going to come out that way.
Lower expectations?
And lower the expectations, because I think it's the repeating pattern of the outcome, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good start. What else can we do?
Understand maybe she's got depression. And so there might be a reason behind her negativity. It's not negativity, it's just the way she feels.
Just having a bad day.
Bad day? Okay, bad day. A lot of bad days, let's say. Those are good aspects.
Equally, you could be conveying something just as much as she's conveying it to you. You could be...
Yes, okay.
I think possibly to...
One at a time. I'm going, Joseph, what were you saying?
It takes two to argue.
Yeah.
Okay. Asher, what were you saying?
I'm saying that perhaps look at some points that you could see the positivity that you know that she's good with, and build her up on that, build her up on the good things that she does, and that perhaps will change the mood of the...
Yeah.
Amazing. Choosing things. Here you have it from the notes as well. In the chats, Maxim is saying that, we could choose topics that will both happy, and it puts us into a positive mind, especially if we had positive experiences from the past. I think also what Haley mentioned before, Rachmanis. Oh, tell us something good about what happened to you today. I should start being positive. Great, I like that. We can choose to focus on positivity. But I want to go back for a second to what Haley said. That is, we choose to label her not as negative, but as somebody who's got a challenge that they might be struggling with. In the Hebrew words, that would be the word Rachmanis. It's a shame.
Rachmanis.
Rachmanis, not in the sense that you say so-and-so is such a Rachmanis, but it's a Rachmanis for somebody else. And that is a game changer. Because instead of me labeling them and judging them, I recognize that it's an opportunity for me to try and help them out if I can. And therefore, it's not a threat to me, but it's the opportunity presenting itself. I'm getting a little bit of distortion. If anyone else is...
Mute.
Okay.
Mute Stephen.
We're a little bit against the clock because right now it's been just over 45 minutes. I'm going to do a summary and then one more story. And then afterwards, we can open up for anyone has time to stay and we can discuss a little bit. But the summary is as follows. We start off with saying, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the story of the student who went out, prime pieces of advice, good eye. Good eye means a selective lens. We spoke about the idea that when we see something, we're going to see what it is that we were looking for. So if we're looking for positivity, that's what we're going to find. How can we look for positivity? We said they're looking for positivity is looking for the godly aspect within it, whatever it might be, a person, a situation, an experience. And then we went on to say, from there we see that if the brain is the one that's going to be able to see things, how can we find positivity? It's by digging. And we had the story of the photographer that they had the nasty comment, and we looked to see what was good about the comment. The famous analogy, you have a white piece of paper and there's one black dot on the piece of paper. Show somebody else the piece of paper, what are they going to notice? Oh, there's a black dot on the paper. What about the rest of the beautiful paper that's white? But we have selective sight. We end up seeing what our eyes are looking out for. And we need to choose to look out for positivity even when it's not obvious and it's not clear. Then we went on to say a few of the stories, but focusing on that when we dig, we will certainly find not only for ourselves, we will find also the ability to empower somebody else, which was the film that we couldn't really see, that film of the ability of where a young kid was switched on when someone believed in him more than he believed in himself. The child believed that I'm a terrorist. I'm a terrible kid. I'm a black sheep. That's who I am, and therefore I'm just going to live up to that standard, that label that I've labeled myself with. And then I hear somebody who honestly believes that I'm much more than that. My sister hears me say how I think she's so positive. It's just a shame that she's struggling with this, that, and the other. She hears me say it again, and she starts believing that that's what I think. And then she could believe the same. That's not an easy journey. And as we said from the start, to find positivity requires digging, requires an active choice, a constant choice. But that choice is worth taking. Positivity bias is this, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the single most fundamental, important key to everything in life is being able to search for positivity. And my blessing to each and every one of you is that we should have the courage to make that choice over and over again. The courage to make that choice over and over again. We're going to choose to see positivity. And when I get hit with negativity, I instantaneously go for natural reaction, automatic reaction is, where can I twist this so that I can remain positive? Because it's so important for me and for everyone around me that I should remain positive. I should be biased towards positivity. We've learned something tonight. I'm going to open up and unmute. Anybody who would like to stay on is more than welcome to. Anyone has any questions, please ask. I wish you having a blessed week, and I'm just going to do 2 call-outs. Tomorrow evening is the Pirkei Avos, same time, same place. Sunday morning at 9:30 is the men's discussion for Parsha, and Monday evening, 8:30 is the women's discussion for Parsha. Have a wonderful week and a lovely Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you,
Thank you, Rabbi Cohen. Bye.
Thank you, lovely. Cheers.
Thank you.
There's one next week, isn't there? There's still one next
there
week.
will be Wednesday, but not the Thursday. Yes, Wednesday
Yeah,
next week.
Wednesday, okay.
Please
All right,
God.
Josie, I'm on my way now. Okay, thank you.
A minute.
Okay. Okay, night, Sylvia. Night, everybody.
Night. Be well. Good news.
Speak to you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Who's this? Alfie Joseph. I love this background.
Levi.
Wow. Have you been out in the sun?
Eddie Edwards, the legend. Yeah. Look at Eddie Edwards when he did his marathon or his another walk and he's won. That background, don't you like? Yeah.
Wow.
Rabbi, a good time for a question?
Please, Bavakasha.
Okay, so
Question.
I was thinking, basically, it's people that you know them in order to get the positivity for them and to build them up. It's a person that you know,
right?
Isn't it?
Generally, yes, but even if not, one can still be positive, give up positive vibes, regardless if I know somebody or not. So if I meet someone and I'm smiling, then I'm showing them a smiling reflection. That's giving off positivity.
Yes.
And the same is true with how I talk to someone, how I communicate in body language, and how I try and feel for them.
Yeah.
Asher.
Ken.
Tonight you're going to give everyone a blessing.
Ah. יהיה ברכה, ברכה והצלחה במעשה ידיך. חזק וברוך. תמשיך לחזק אותנו.
Bezat Hashem, שיהיה בשורות טובות. If you can make it Sunday morning, we'd love to see you. And also next Wednesday will be the last class before Shavuos.
Okay, looking forward.
Be well, sei gesund.
Kol tuv, sei gesund.
Sei gesund. Yes.
Thanks, Levi.
I'm trying to recognize the picture here.
It was a Shabbat, one of your Friday nights. Shabbat, you know.
This is a Sunday morning, New Year's Day.
Oh, Taki, you're right. Emma, you
remember the picture?
Not my New Year.
Oh!
Not my New Year.
Yeah, you're good. Very good.
Good, clever. Yes, January the 1st this year. You're right, January the 1st.
The Gregorian calendar.
Gregorian calendar, the Romans. Wow,
good answer. Gregorian calendar.
Good answer, Yas. Good answer.
Good to see you. It's good to see you guys.
Be well.
Levi, we've got Mincha at 5 to 10 with Rabbi Daniel, so I need to go and have a quick shower.
Very good. Getting ready for davening. It's the way to go. Good to see you and look forward to seeing you again.
Keep well.
You know what you should do? I always forget because Stephen Levine kindly texted me that I've forgotten about it. So you should send like a WhatsApp to the Shia starting in 20 minutes or something.
It's a good idea. Instead of sending it.
Rabbi Daniel sent, because Rabbi Daniel says like Gemara Shia or Shia starting in 20 minutes because even Rabbi Daniel the week forgot Mincha because there's so much going on. The time you just forget.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just ask, Rabbi?
Please.
At weddings, why does the man smash the glass with his foot?
What you're saying? What's the positivity in that? We're positively remembering the temple that was destroyed and praying for it to be returned. So we're saying even at the height of our joy, we haven't forgotten that this is just a build-up, and we're looking forward to when the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, will be rebuilt. That's the concept.
It's nothing to do with it's the last time he'll put his foot down.
No, absolutely not. We continue to put our foot down always.
All right. Well, thank you for the book recommendation, and thank you for this evening.
Absolutely. Be well. Thank you. Take care, Sylvia.
I shall look tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Right now, you're still on silent? What's going on? Hiding behind the curtains.
Positivity bias.
You're biased.
I have not a single spot to say anything.
There you go. Why would you?
How are you?
Baruch Hashem. We are at not. Hold on a second. Have you heard back from that Bris Plaid that you sent up?
No, not yet. It will take about 2 weeks, I think, maybe more. I need to look on the website. They say on the website what is the next step and what is the deadline. So I don't know yet.
Wow. Okay. Please God, good things. Praise Hashem. How are you keeping? How are you managing?
Fine. The weather is good, so maybe after your lesson, come out for a walk a little bit with my friends.
Good
just
idea.
to get some fresh air.
Do you have where to go? You have places that you can go that are nice?
Well, yes, there are some quiet roads here in Victoria Park, and you can go to this Birchfields Park. So there are some quiet paths from Victoria Park to Fallowfield, not very well known, and they're very nice and green and leafy.
Maybe knock on Ellie's door and say hello.
Yes.
Surprise him. Have you rapped today?
Yes. Actually, the last 3 days I have been doing the proper thing. So apart from the Shema, I try to read the morning blessings and the Amida.
Wow.
So, yes,
Brilliant.
getting back to what I was doing long time ago.
Amazing. Fantastic. It's the way forward. Definitely the way forward. Especially next week, Thursday night, Friday night, Shabbos, is going to be the Yom Tov. It's going to be Shavuos. We're celebrating receiving the Torah. Friday, book it in now. Next Friday, book it off. No work.
Yes.
10 Commandments.
They're not gonna be opening shuls, In Israel they are, but here I don't know. I don't think.
Everybody's bringing shul home. Wherever you are, you bring a shul home to you. You have a topa, you have a Torah, and you bring it home. You open it up. You read the 10 Commandments, and more importantly, we're taking it up. It's true. On the one hand, it sounds like we're being more lenient in the sense that we're not opening up the shuls, but in reality, we're being more strict. The reality is we're being very careful with life, and that's really the way forward. I was actually on a few conference calls in the past few days, just discussing the UK guidance and just comparing notes from different professionals. And it seems very clear that the Jewish community is going to be expecting to be slower in opening up than everywhere else. It's become, now in hindsight, we've seen how much we should have stopped. We should have started our lockdown much earlier as well. We did start lockdown a bit earlier. We should have started even earlier, and we should probably be much more careful in opening up. Doesn't mean we don't have any interaction, but shul is very, very unpredictable. We're humans at the end of the day, so we're going to be careful. All we need is a little bit of slip up, so we have to be really, really careful. Even if it's not for ourselves, for somebody else. There's one other person who's going somewhere, or is an elderly person themselves, etc. Yeah, but we have to have good news. Positively biased.
What's the positivity? Because for me, it feels like, obviously after 49 days, on the 50, I want to go and hug my Torah. I want to see the Torah and hug it and
hug yourself. You become a Torah, learn all day and all night, and then you'll be it. Fantastic. Hashem. It should be a good week.
Call to.
I'm going to leave you guys to it. Be well. Besuras Tovas, those who can make it tomorrow, we're looking forward to seeing you. Otherwise, next week. Sei gesund.
Sei gesund.
Thank you very much, Levi. Asher, keep well. Have a good night.
Take care.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.